Okay, this week we don't have any kind of specific lessons. We're just going to continue making progress on this car, and hopefully knowledge will flow through that. So the two goals for today are this wheel and then the steering wheel, which is currently two parts. I will show a simpler version of the steering wheel, and then we'll do the more complicated version. And then I will also probably, if there's time, show how I would kind of define panels on the car, because right now it's all just kind of one thing. So yeah, we'll get to that if there's time. But first, let's start with these tires. Now, we had previously just blocked them in, but now we need to add some more detail. And so this is my primary point of reference. As I searched for white-walled tires on Google Images, this was one of the first images that popped up of decent resolution. And so this is what we're going to do our best to emulate. Sans, really complicated tread pattern. You can see I did something much simpler. And it really only, I used, insert edge loop, extrude, move, and scale. There may have been a moment or two of snapping, but that's it. It's all things that we've covered before. So now I'm just gonna, I'll talk you through the process of, there's a lot of edge loops here, and it can kind of feel complicated and overwhelming. But I'll talk you through kind of the general workflow of establishing the broad strokes, and then going back and adding more detail. Okay, so first, I need to open up where we left off in class, which is this file right here. Okay, good. Now you can see I blocked them in as two different sizes. I'm just going to make them all the same tire. I can turn off my reference image. I don't need that. I'm also going to set my project and make sure that it is where it needs to be. So here, and then it goes in class toy car set. All right, now my current file is the blocking version, so I'm going to save as, and I'm going to increment this. So I'm going to say toy car 02 underscore wheels. Okay, and click save as. All right. So we can either start with our blocked in tire, or we could add a new tire. It doesn't really matter either way. I'm going to think about that. I'm going to add a new tire, and the reason is I want more subdivisions. Actually, can I just? No, yeah, I thought so. I want more than 8 subdivisions, just because before it was looking just a little blockier than I would like, and so yeah, I'm gonna add a new one. So let's see. I'm going to just delete that tire. I'm going to add a new cylinder. Rotate it around the y-axis. Excuse me, not the y-axis. We want to rotate it around the z-axis, 90 degrees. And we are going to set the subdivision axis to 12, and the height, we'll bring it down something like 0.5, and the radius we can bring down a little bit too, I think. And then we need to position this. That's not where that goes. Okay. Maybe I'll bring my reference image up briefly just to get an idea of where this needs to go. Okay, again, you can see my reference image isn't really lining up that well. But you can see the tires come almost right to the point of the car, so I will move it forward. And then obviously we want the tire on the ground, not underneath the ground. And if we have a radius of 0.7, then we want the translate y to be 0.7. And everything lines up nicely. Okay, that might be a little big. I'm gonna move that down to 0.6, and then 0.6 there as well. Okay, it still looks a little bit too fat, so we'll go like Oops, 0.4 will be good. And subdivision caps, you can get a quick kind of head start here, and I'll set that to 3. All right, so there's our starting point for the tire, or the wheel. And we'll call it wheel front left. All right. Okay, so now we're good to start modeling. I'm going to pull up my reference image for a moment and kind of talk through how I want to go about this. So there's a handful of kind of key changes in direction of the surface, all right? And that's what I'm looking for first. I'm not going to worry about this little seam between the white and the black part of the tire. I'm not going to worry about these little ridges in the chrome part. I'm not even going to worry, well, maybe I'll define this ridge on the first pass. But it's the major transitions, so it's the transition between the white and the actual rim, the transition between the chrome and the red here, and then this deep crease, and obviously this hub, the kind of the hubcap type section right here. Those are the major forms that I need to define first, and then I can go back and add in extra detail. So, I've got my tire. I'm gonna hide my car layer. I'm gonna turn off my reference. I'm just gonna hide that too. So just display hide selection. Whoops. I don't want that. There we go. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to keep my reference image open on my other monitor. I encourage you to find a place to park your reference image to. All right. So the first, the obvious kind of distinction is between the rubber part of the tire and the rim. And I'm going to use this edge loop to define that. And I'm just going to scale it down. Now this edge loop is on a flat plane, so I can scale it just to the kind of the overall scale and it'll be fine. Okay, something like that looks pretty good. I'm going to select this and whoops, just that little one and scale that down to. All right, and actually, so I'm going to make this center hub out of part of a sphere. So I don't need these faces here. So I'm just going to delete them. All right. Okay, so now, what? So I don't know what this selection icon is doing. I've not seen that before. Okay, so we've got the this is the transition between the wheel and the rim. I'm going to select this edge. Okay, I don't know what my cursor is doing. Selection style to drag. Just reset the tool. There we go. Okay, that's better. So now I'm just going to basically be working with the leading edge. All right, so I'm going to scale this up because now I want to define kind of the chrome area. So if this is the line between the white and the red, this will be the start of the chrome. Kind of keep these on the screen at the same time. That might help everybody. So this will represent this little red area. You can see there's a little lip on this chrome. So I'm going to, with that edge selected, I'm going to extrude the edge and I'm just going to scale it. Okay, and this is to define this little thickness of the chrome. And then I'm going to extrude it again. And I'm not going to scale it. Oh, that's not extrude, that's just the rotate. G to repeat the last action. Okay, so scale it, extrude it. Now I'm going to move it back. Okay, and now this is defining this kind of the width of that chrome piece, right? Or the depth of it, actually. All right, I'm going to do the same thing for this next red section. All right, so I'm going to extrude the edge, and I'm just going to scale it in a little bit. Okay, again, I'm just defining this width, and then I will hit G to repeat my last action, which is extrude, and I'm going to push that back to define this red section. Okay? So now I need to define these two kind of curvy bits, right? For lack of a better term, I'll say curvy bits. And I'm just going to do it by defining the creases or the edges first. I'll go back and add in the roundness later. So I'm going to extrude the edge. We will scale it down to about there, and then I'm going to bring it forward. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to extrude it. I'm going to scale it down to about there, and I'm going to bring that forward a little bit more. Okay. So now we've basically defined our kind of wheel rim. Don't worry about the backside. We'll deal with that later. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to make this complete. So I'm going to do this center hubcap. Remember, I said I'm going to do this from a sphere. So I'll just pull that back over. I'm going to add, and I'm doing this in edge mode, so I'm adding it to the same object. I'm going to add a sphere. Oh, okay, it adds it as a separate object anyway. Never mind. I need to make sure that I have the same number of subdivisions so that all of the points line up and I can connect them. So I'm going to set my subdivisions. 12 and 12 should be plenty. Right, and I'm doing this because this will keep the round kind of cap perfectly round. It's kind of easier that way. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees around the Z-axis. I'm going to select the back faces plus one more, and I'm going to delete them. Oh. And you see it did not select all the way through, so I'll make sure I get all of those. Okay. Now I'm going to go into object mode. I need to line this up with my wheel. All right. And so the way that I'm going to do that, the pivot for this sphere is nowhere to be seen. Where's my pivot? It's interesting. I don't know where my move tool went, but that's okay. I'll just go to modify transformation tools and move, rotate, scale tool. I can see all of my options at once. Okay, so I need to get this sphere cap in the center of my wheel. So I'm going to turn on point snapping, and I'm going to move it so that the center of my sphere is lined up. I'm going to do this in the front, or yeah, in the side view here, so that the centers line up, right? So I will hover over that center. It's going to snap into place. Now I can look back here in my perspective view, and I'm going to select all of the faces. I'm going to scale them down, all right, because that was obviously way too large. We'll scale them down, and then I also want to flatten it out a little bit. I don't want it to be a perfect kind of spherical shape. Something like that, I think, is going to work a lot better. Okay, and then we can scale it down in this direction a little bit more too. Just kind of get the shape where I want it. Okay, that looks good. So the next thing then that I want to do is actually, well, first I need to combine the two together. So I'm going to select the wheel first, then my cap, and go to Mesh Combine. I selected the wheel first because it'll maintain the name. And I'll jump back into face mode. And there's a couple ways that I could connect these. I could bridge the faces, I could target weld the vertices, or I can, oops, face. I'm going to select this face loop. All right, I selected it quickly by selecting one face, holding down Shift, and double-clicking the face next to it, and select the whole face loop. I'm going to delete that one that I just made. Okay, and then I'll select this whole cap by double-clicking it. And I'm just going to move, whoops, turn off snapping. And I'm going to move it in here. So we look at it in the front view. I'll position it right about there. Okay. So now all I have to do is select these two edges and I can bridge them. Okay, and I'm back to where I was. And it's all connected. Move manipulator back, I had to delete Maya's preferences, and then it restored them, and everything should be good now. So we can continue making this awesome tire. So here's my reference again, and you can see we've laid out the general forms, but we don't really have any division between the two, especially if I hit 3 on the number pad. Things get really soft and weird, okay? That doesn't look good. So we need to add some more edge loops to really define the shapes and the transitions. And I will start from the center and kind of work my way back out. So the first is going to be this center metallic hub. Okay? I'm going to go to edge mode and my insert edge loop tool. Relative distance from edge is good. And I want to make this dark crease. So I'm going to add an edge loop real close to what was my sphere. Okay? And already if I hit 3 on the number pad, it's going to be a little bit better defined, right? You can already see that there's a better crease there. But we can really emphasize that a little bit more. Hit 1 back on the number pad. And that's, so with that edge loop I just added, I'm going to select those faces. So that one, and then hold down Shift, double click the face next to it. It'll select that whole ring. And I'm going to extrude this face and just move it in. Okay, I'll kind of rotate around so you can see that. Okay, I'm going to move that in. Now, if I hit 3 on the number pad, now you can see I've got that seam really nicely defined. Okay, so that was just defining the borders with 2 edge loops and then extruding that inside face loop. All right. Okay. So I've got that center detail defined. Now I'm going to work my way out. The next detail is this first kind of round bit. All right. So the first thing I want to do is I want to define this little seam there. So edge mode, I'm going to add an edge loop. I'm just going to put it pretty close there. All right, and I'm just going to leave it like that. All right, so now if I hit 3 on the number pad and jump out to object mode, deselect, you can kind of see that it's there. It's going to get a whole lot more apparent here in a second. I need to add more edge loops. So now I'm going to go to my edge loop tool, and I'm going to set it to multiple edge loops. I'm going to add 2. All right, with the equal modifier on. And I wanted to find this little round section here, right? And so the easy way to do that is with 2 edge loops. I'm going to add them right there. And then with them still selected, I'm going to scale them up a little bit. And then I'm going to pull them forward. I'm going to rotate my view so I can kind of see a nice profile of one of the edges. Okay, and maybe I want to scale them down just a little bit. Pull them forward a little bit more. It's tweaking. There we go. Okay. So now I've got that defined. Lovely. That's a nice kind of subtle crease, which is similar to what we have here. If I want to make that more pronounced, I can add another edge loop. If I want to make it look like a seam, I can do what I did with the chrome hubcap and actually extrude the inside faces in. I don't really need to do that right now. Okay. So let's continue on. We've got this next round bit here, which is going to be the same process. But before we do that, I want to define this inside crease here, right? So I'm going to add an edge loop. Make sure I reset my tool to relative distance from edge, right? And this inside corner, I'm going to add an edge loop pretty close. And then I'm going to move it behind that edge just a little bit. Right, so I'm going to move it back. And I just want this small face here to be kind of angled in. Just a little bit. Something like that will work. All right. And that's just because it's going to make this next part a little bit easier. So now, like I did before, I'm going to select that face loop. All right. This whole face loop. And I'm going to extrude it. I'm going to move it in a little bit. And I'm going to scale it up a little bit. Okay. And I angled that face before I extruded it, just so that when I scaled it up, it wouldn't kind of overlap on itself and be weird. All right, so that will define that crease nicely. Now I can go in and define the second round shape. So again, that's back to edge mode. And insert edge loop tool. I'll do multiple edge loops, 2 again. Add them. And now I can bring them forward and scale them up just a little bit. And you'll bring them a little bit more forward. Okay, so it's repeating the same process, but it's an effective process, so why not repeat it, right? Cool. So now I've got that piece figured out. And, you know, this red part would be smooth up until this transition here. So I'm good there. I do want to make sure that this stays flat, because you see when I smooth it out, it starts to bend pretty quick. So I'm going to add one edge loop right about there. Okay. So now when I smooth it out, it's just going to be a little bit better defined. Up next is this dark crease between the red and the chrome. So I'm going to do it the same way that I did the last 2 creases. I'm going to add in a little edge loop right here. I'm going to select that face loop. Okay, that whole face loop, you see it? And then extrude it. And I'm just going to scale it up a little bit. Okay. So now when I zoom out, you can see what that looks like. Okay. We're almost there, believe it or not. We can kind of skip these ridges for now. Whoops. The next is I need to define this transition here between the chrome and the red. And this is actually kind of a slightly, I'm not going to say trickier, but there's a little bit more to it. You can see there's this little lip that goes in, right? But generally speaking, it is the same process. So I'm going to, oops, edge mode, insert edge loop, one right there. Okay, because I want to keep that flat up until that point. Now, look at this for a second. Okay, I'm going to use, yeah, this line here is going to be the seam between the chrome and the red. So here's what I'm going to do. Looks like this red area is kind of indented. So I'm going to select that face loop. And I'm going to do this full screen so you can understand what's happening. Actually, let me look at this again real quick. Yeah. Yeah? Yeah, okay. Select that whole face loop. And I'm going to extrude it in. So extrude it and then just move it in. Okay, and that's getting this depth right here. Now we've got this kind of under-curled lip, right, where the chrome overlaps the red. This is a kind of a tricky part. As I'm going to select this inside face, all right? This is the face that I just created from that extrusion. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to add one more edge loop. Right there. Okay, I'm doing this because if I extrude this whole face in, it's going to overlap on the front, and then you're going to have two faces occupying the same space, and that's bad. We don't want that. Okay. So now this face, I'm going to select and extrude that in, or extrude it, and then I'm just going to scale it in. Just that way. I can hold down Control to make it a little bit finer. Okay, there we go. Now I can hit 3 on the number pad, object mode. Okay, so now we've got that little overlapped rim. Now we just have to define this kind of red lip here, right? And so for that, edge. I'm going to insert one more edge loop. Right there. Oops, that's not what I want. And then I will extrude that newly created face loop out. Something like that. Okay. And then I just need to create this little crease in there. Okay, and that will be same way that we did it before, right? Oops. If I can remember the key command. There we go. Insert edge loop. Make a little face. Select the face loop. And extrude it in. I will actually scale it down just a touch too. Oops. There we go. This is, I think, did I go through the wall? I want to make sure I'm not going through the other side of the wall. I think we're good there. Yeah. All right. So that is the wheel section. Well, that looks pretty good. So now we just have to define the tire section and just give it a little bit more body. It's a little too round right now. I mean, this part is actually not bad. The wall of the tire. Now we can zoom out here. Could probably stand to be a little bit flatter, but it's not too bad. We just need to mark where that shift between white and black is going to be. So, you guessed it, more edge loops. Just going to add in, whoops, one edge loop right about there. And then one on top of it. And that inside one, I'm just going to push in just a little bit. So it's going to move it in just a hair. Okay. So it's not really coming across when I hit 3 on the number pad, right, to smooth it. So I need to add, I'm going to add one more edge loop right here. Make sure that I can really define that shift. There we go, that's better. Now I've kind of flattened out the tire a little bit, and probably a little bit more than I wanted to. So now I'm just going to select those edge loops, all 4 of them. Just bring that out. Okay, and maybe I'll add one more here and bring that out a little bit too. All right, just to make sure I've got that nice round shape. And then I'm just going to very simply create some grooves in the tire. And to do that, I'm going to go to my Insert Edge Loop tool. I'll set my multiple edge loops to 8. Go like that. And then I want to select every other one and drag it close. And then I will select them all and kind of recenter them, right? And then maybe, no, I think that's good. And then, much like we did before, I'll select all of those face loops and extrude them in. Again, it's the same few commands repeated over and over again. This scale, this extrusion, is actually a good one to do in the smooth view, because you can get a sense of exactly how far you need to go. You don't have to go far at all. It's just kind of enough to give an indication of tread. Okay, I think that works rather nicely. Okay. And then on the back side, you can do this kind of the same thing of, well, not the same thing. I'm going to scale this center down. This is going to be my axle, kind of. Let's see. Yeah, we'll scale that down. Then I'm going to select that. This I want to be roughly the same size as the front. And you're not really going to see it, but we'll keep it close. So I'll scale that down on the side view. And then just a couple more extrusions. Select that face loop. I'm going to extrude this in. This is going to be a much simpler side of the tire. Don't go too far, then you'll get through the back side. Okay, something like that I think works. You could even extrude it one more time. Scale that. Oops, actually, I'm going to undo that extrusion. And then I'm going to redo it. I want to adjust the offset here. Something like that. Okay, and then I can move that in. Get a little bit of definition there, make it somewhat interesting. And then for the axle, this is not going to be a true to form axle. Again, this is a toy car, not a real working car. I'm going to delete those faces. Select this edge. And I'm just going to turn on my grid snapping and move it into the center of the grid. All right. And there is my tire. Now you can add another edge loop maybe in here to sharpen that up. That's looking a little bit soft. Oops. Edge, there we go. Insert edge loop. Nope. Don't want 8. I just need 1. Put 1 there. And maybe 1 there. Okay. Cool. So that is the tire. So the last thing we have to do with this tire, I'm going to turn the car body back on, is get this tire into position. So I'm going to first, I'm just going to mirror this. So I'm going to select the tire, go to mesh, mirror. Perfect. Good, lovely. Excellent. Now we just need to duplicate this. So Command D to duplicate it. And I'm just going to move it back. I'm going to turn off grid snapping. I'm going to undo that, turn off grid snapping. Move it back. Now at the back of the car is a little bit wider. So all I need to do is select all of these vertices and just move it a little bit further away. Yeah, so we'll just move it so it clears the car, and then we can delete all of those faces and remirror it. Mesh, mirror. There we go. So those are wheels for the car. Oh, and you can see I've got a slight issue with that, so I'd have to just select a shortcut anyways to select this face. Just move forward. There we go. Crime hidden. Later on we can go in and actually cut holes for the axles so it doesn't look like it's just intersecting, because we don't want that. But in the meantime, we will display and show all. We can kind of smooth some things out. Whoops. And this is where our car is currently sitting. Okay, we're getting there. Progress is being made. We will do the steering wheel next.